You can go. Good afternoon. We are Southern Baptist Engineering. Today we will be presenting our final flood mitigation design for the City of Wellsville, Missouri. Our team consists of our project lead, Colby Waller, Ms. Yusuf as our civil structural engineer, Justin Hatton, to my left, is the geotech engineer, Joseph Henderson as the construction engineer, and I myself, Chase Kathman, is the water resource engineer. So our final presentation outline consists of project description, preliminary and site investigation, scope of work, our conceptual design alternatives, and our selected final designs. A little bit about Wellsville. It's located in the mid-north region of Montgomery County, Missouri, with a population around 1,000 individuals. And the northeastern side of the city is prone to flooding due to failing infrastructure, poor hydraulic connectivity, poor soil grouping, inadequate routing into the local stream. That local stream is White Oak. Our stakeholders are Community College Partners Program and the University of South Alabama. So these pictures were taken last summer of 2022 from a flash flooding. It was in the local news, and it just shows how bad the city gets during flooding. Residents have a hard time going to and from the city, and a lot of work is outside the city, so they have to go away from the city.
So for a preliminary investigation of the city, we obtained some LiDAR data from the United States Geological Survey website at 1/3 of our second scale, which gets us an elevation data at 30 by 30 foot increment. We then plugged this information to our GIS model, where we had the model split the city up into 3 different segments, where we noticed most flooding in the northeastern part of the city, where a lot of backflow happened. So we'll be focusing our attention to the northeastern part of the city. We opened our in-person consultation in the city of Wellsville. We noticed many issues as shown in these pictures here: ponding, culverts, improper routing, poor culvert placements, blockages, and overgrowth in many areas. These are just 6 of the examples that we've seen. There's many more around us. For our scope of work, Southern Oak Engineering has been tasked to provide a flood mitigation design for the northeastern part of the city to help with the flooding effects in the city. We'll be designing for a 10-year 24-hour storm period, and we will be excluding permitting, construction, any calculations within for structural and geotech for our weird calculations, and acquisition of land. So this brings us to our conceptual design alternatives that we had for the city, and we have these alternatives that we decided on with the evaluation criteria that we decided on here that are cost, efficiency, sustainability, constructability, lifespan, and maintenance demand. And we decided on those percentages based on how important they are for the city.
So for our final selection of the final design, we used a combination of our most feasible design alternatives with the retention basin design, as well as drainage scale improvements. This is what we combination because that's 2 ways. You can fix the roadside drainage, but if you don't have enough capacity in the conveyance within the creek, you'll just have back flooding back into the city, and vice versa. If you don't have enough, if you have storage in the creek, but you haven't fixed the drainage in the city, then you ultimately be not routing the water to the creek itself. So we decided that this would be the most feasible design for the solution, the combination of these to convey storm water and continue. So some of the aspects we had to consider within our design, especially for the economic, environmental, and social aspects, is we want to make sure that the design that we chose was cost efficient for the town. We also want to make sure that there was low maintenance demand because there's a small labor force for the city at the time. So make sure that they're not managing in 24/7 trying to make sure it works. We also want to make sure that there was environmentally friendly aspects to it that help prevent pollution from runoff off the road and also prevent erosion from the entrance of the pond. For public health and safety and welfare, we want to make sure that we had minimal impact to the properties that were associated that people own. We wanted to make sure that the town itself was kept intact, and we also want to make sure that the design was aesthetically pleasing to the eye and not an eyesore to the residents. So for our phase 1, we did our basin detention design, which, as stated previously, will be focused on primarily attenuating stormwater within the White Oak Creek in order to convey it at a much controlled rate and storing it for a short period of time. So to do this, we started with QGIS, and in QGIS, we were able to delineate the watershed associated with the northeastern region of Wellsville, Missouri, and we found 6 subbasins that were associated with this area of flood. And that totals to about 282 acres of land. And through this, we were also able to obtain information such as curb number, imperviousness, land cover, and soil information in order to use in a HEC-RAS modeling software. HEC-RAS is the Hydrologic Engineering Center river analysis software, which is a software provided by the Army Corps of Engineers that can form a hydraulic model based on a specified storm event that you place over your project grid. So once we put all this information in, we decided to model it for a 10-year, 24-hour storm period because this is the most problematic storm that they have. So this video shows you time series in 5 minutes of the 10-year, 24-hour storm with the flooding depths throughout the city. As you can see, this is White Oak Creek. And there's a point in time where it reaches a significant point of flooding that results in a lot of problems and it takes a while for it to. So what did we learn from this video? We learned that the model showed that it was the average depth at the peak time of 13 hours was about 6.5 inches. We also found that the flow rate at the peak time at the creek outlet location was about 70 cubic feet per second, which that validated our hand calculations, which we used the SCS runoff method, which helps us estimate the higher end of runoff that you can find on a piece of property. And we computed that it was about 93 cubic feet per second. So our HEC-RAS software produced a flow rate that was about 24% lower than our actual model. So we were able to take this hydrograph from this location in the creek and place it into a software Excel to perform our basin attenuation design for our detention basin. So as you can see here, we use the storage indication method to determine the size and shape of our basin. Essentially, this is taking the shape of a basin with its characteristics as well as its inflow and its outflow characteristics to determine how much storage you have and what the outflow will look like based on the characteristics and put into it. So using a basin of 900 feet long at the bottom, 90 foot wide at the bottom, 3 foot in depth with 3 to 1 side slopes, and a weir of 4 foot wide at the crest and a foot located above the bottom of the basin, we're able to attenuate the flooding by half. And as you can see on this graph here, the black line represents the inflow hydrograph, which the peak time was 70.38 cubic feet per second, whereas when we attenuated it with this basin design, we were able to bring it down to 32.25 cubic feet per second. This also provides 1.93 acre feet of storage within the basin that can also go through evaporation or infiltration into the soils.
So following this hydraulic modeling, we use these results and data to actually design the basin and locate it in the city. We use AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and InfoWorks heavily to do this, and not only to locate it, but to also optimize grading and cut and fill quantities. Ultimately, we modeled this slightly larger to improve constructability. Here you can see the overall basic plan view of the final design with resulting total lengths of 840 feet and approximate area of 2.17 acres. Overall, we graded the bottom at 1.4% slope, kind of continuing the routing of White Oak Creek. Ultimately to the output location, you can see where we used a weir structure. Also, in all the inlet locations as well as the outlet, we used riprap for erosion control. Here you see a typical section of the basin. We're using a 3-to-1 overall slope that daylights the existing grade and results in an overall depth of 3 feet. Here, like I said, is the weir structure. This is a conceptual preliminary model. Basically, we used when we determined the sizing and calculations of the basin itself. So these are the main dimensions we use, although this design and the weir itself will be strictly provided by others.
Phase 2 of our flood mitigation design for Wellsville consists of the drainage channel improvements within the city. We will modify existing drainage channels to meet our design dimensions. And then we will replace existing culverts with larger diameter culverts. The dimensions of our proposed drainage channels were calculated using the best hydraulic section equation. The average channel flow rates and the average channel slope was acquired using the HEC-RAS software. In the design water depth in the drainage channel using the 10-year, 24-hour storm event came out to be 1 foot and 3 inches deep. And many of the existing culverts in the city are only a foot in diameter. So we would need to replace the existing foot diameter culverts with larger diameter culverts. And then we are proposing a corrugated metal pipe culvert because it's relatively easy to install and it's more cost efficient. And over on the right side of the screen, we have a map showing our drainage channel improvement locations where we're proposing the 2-foot culverts and the 3-foot culverts. And where we are proposing to remove existing culverts. And our drainage channel drains to the northeast into our detention basin. Here we have an existing roadside drainage typical section. The existing drainage channels vary from 3 inches deep to 10 inches deep. And are very inconsistent throughout the city. Here we have our proposed roadside drainage typical section. And our proposed design will help improve stormwater runoff storage capacity in the drainage channels, and it will help route the runoff water better to our detention. Here's a more detailed drawing of our drainage channel design. We have a bottom width of 1 foot, 2 to 1 side slopes, a total depth of 2 feet, a 9-foot width at the top, and it will be lined with tall pesky grass, which is common for that area. Summarize our design. We first identified the flooding issues. From there, we acquired preliminary data, performed a site visit. Upon our site visit and our data acquisition, we came up with 10 conceptual design alternatives. We put those 10 design alternatives into a selection matrix where we selected our 2 final designs, which will be the detention basin design and then the drainage channel improvements. And then once we had our final designs, we began modeling, performing calculations for those designs. We came up with some erosion control plan, and we performed quality control and strength checks within our team. And we finally came up with final design drawings, and then we prepared a cost estimate for each phase. And our total design cost estimate for both phases combined is $369,260. That's all we have for y'all today. And open the floor to any questions.
Okay, so you're talking about the culverts. Well, so the phase 1 was the actual pond itself, and then phase 2 was the ditch modification. Okay, good. So the larger diameter culverts. So since this is a flood prone area, increasing diameter obviously takes away cover and changes flood lines. So you start impacting outward from there. Do y'all think that some of that will have impacts on not interrupting how close everyone already is to all of these ditches?
There's enough time to.
Yeah, there is going to be, there's generally very a large amount of space in between the roadway. Especially the even sidewalks that vary from 12 to 15 feet. There was a lot of green space if they even had any type of roadside ditch. Most of this area in the city had 0 ditch at all.
My only other thing on that for follow-up is 2-to-1 floods are very hard to maintain. So that I know that y'all have already presented, but moving forward, that's hard to maintain for normal cities and their equipment.
What range of rainfall data did you use?
We used rainfall data from no atmosphere. We used it. We did a convolution process. We took the peak point, was the estimate point peak depth for the area of Missouri. Then we did the convolution process to figure out what the inch to ground would be.
So for your detention pond, I might have already said this. Were you planning on designing a wet pond or a dry pond?
It'll be a wet pond.
Be a wet pond.
It would be a kind of a mixture of both, because there'll be a temporary storage of about 1.93 acre feet, and based on just hand calculations, you take about at the rise conditions, you can take about 30 days. What do you work?
Okay. So from that one drawing, it looked like y'all were excavating out, right? So do y'all know where the water table is?
We were unable to take.
Okay, so that's one issue that you kind of have to take into account for whenever you do these ponds is where your water table is and if you have any perched water table. So I know you have a clay site. So there's a good possibility you're gonna have either a perched water table or it's gonna be really deep in the ground.
Right.
So did y'all take that into account at all or of any possible?
We just did it as a typical.
All right.
We were lacking in information, so.
Yeah, I get it.
it.
I mean, how are you gonna get it? That's fine. Yeah.
I have one question on the plan view drawing where you kind of just laid out the yellow lines. To show the ditches throughout the city. Just on a quick glance, there's a lot of driveways and things like that through there. And then the next slide was the drainage ditches. So did you, in your cost, did you account for, I'm assuming you're planning on putting culverts under all those driveways. I mean, that's substantial amount of driveways that you're gonna have to tear out, put a culvert in and put back. Did you?
We did consider that. Of course, not all the driveways were concrete, because most of them had been previous problems with flooding. But on the higher end of the cost estimate, we assumed that there were about 96 driveways. And if we were to assume that they were all concrete, we came up with the cost of that aspect.
Okay, thank you.
Where did you get the requirement for the 10-year storm? And did you look at analyzing your system for anything over 10 years?
We did analyze it. We used the stormwater best management practices. It was really up to our own discretion as to what was the best possible. Through the guidance that we got through our faculty advisors and through other faculty, that it was the best way to get that. There were really no governing regulations that decided this is the storm we need. This is the storm. We went through, we modeled a 10-year, 24-hour, 50-year, 24-hour, 100-year, 24-hour, and there was very minimal change. And so we believe that by making the design that we had, we'd be able to, with the minimal change that was produced, oversize the basin slightly, but also help cover some of that. Well, anything the flow rate would be a little bit higher out of here.
Question. So the edge of your pond looks like it's pretty close to those. Is that a residence or what building is that to the northeast of
Right
that
here?
box? Yeah.
This, I believe that's an apartment.
All right. So do you know how close your pond's gonna be to that building?
Yeah.
I think it was somewhere in the range of around 30, 40 feet,
Okay. Did you look at any potential flipstability impacts of removing that dirt and anything like that?
We split it geotechnical analysis.
Probably far enough away, but curious if y'all look into that.
Yeah, similar question. Who owns that property?
This is,
The city?
this property would be owned by, I think the individual who owns this farmland back here would be the person who's responsible for it. Of course, this is just a theoretical design that could
Sure.
possibly work. So of course, we would have to consider obtaining that land, but we did not put this stuff to work.
Where does your detention basin discharge to? And did you look at potential issues with large overflows, scour situations?
That's it.
we did not consider scour, because at the outlet, we have riprap. And it's mainly clay soils, and the cohesion will hold it together a lot better than, like say, sand or silt.
We try to locate it in the existing White Oak Creek area where water's already been routed, to try and best utilize the area and not impact other items.
I got one more question. So the inflow from these pipes, you might have already mentioned this, but did you size your riprap for maximum flow into this detention pond? Did y'all look into
We
that?
Just use a typical, that.
Okay.
Other questions?